Super Rugby Trans-Tasman Saturday games. That's quite a fixtures list. If you guys are keen for some rugby, you've got back-to-back games. I think it's like 7, 9:45 and 11:55 times here in New Zealand, so it'll be a late night if you're staying up to watch the Chiefs. But it will be sure fun to see the likes of Richard Kahui going up against Liam Messam. That's a bit of a blast from the past. But anyway, we've got 3 games. We'll go over the squads quickly, some of the predictions, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how things are going to go. We do have a SuperBRU pool. SuperBRU is a predictions game. It's free. You can use your phone. You can use your computer. I'll put a link in the description to that one. It's not sponsored. It's not paid. It's just a bit of fun to see who's got the best predictions in the land for knowing their Super Rugby outcomes, basically. So, if you do want to sign up to that pool, it is a bit of fun in the description. First game is the Crusaders and the Brumbies. It's a bit of a top-of-the-table clash. The Brumbies have got a hell of a run, man. They got the Crusaders, the Chiefs, and then the Blues, all in New Zealand. Away. First, second, and third from the New Zealand competition. It doesn't get any tougher, to be fair. I guess you get your toughest game out of the way early. But yeah, these teams are both, you got the champion and the runner-up from their respective competitions, 6-2 records. The Brumbies lost both their games against the Reds. The Crusaders dropped a couple, Chiefs and Highlanders, but it should be a pretty fascinating one. The Crusaders gone with a strong lineup, Bauer, Taylor, and Alalatoa as the front row. Interestingly, Taylor is captain because Scott Barrett's on the bench. Dunshea starts ahead of him. I guess he's having a wee break. Whitelock is there as well. Blackadder, Sanders, and Grace is the back row. Hall and Moonga are the preferred 19 combo. They still continue to switch up Hall and Drummond. Havili and Enor is a pretty good looking midfield. Remember, Enor has only just come back from a really long-term injury. He was on the bench for the final. But they're backing him, obviously, to be back fully fit now as he starts. And the midfield has been an area where the Crusaders have looked a little bit disjointed thus far this season. They've got Whainganuku, who has been filling that gap in the midfield on the left wing. And if you haven't seen him play, if you haven't been watching Aotearoa, he's a big unit of a man. His offensive stats are just phenomenal. Breaks tackles, gets clean breaks. He is a proper powerhouse. Mataele gets a crack on the right wing, and George Bridges at fullback. You got Oli Jaeger. Severis, Scott Barrett, as I mentioned, on the bench for that one. So it's a bit of a rotated lineup. Remember, both these sides played in the final last week, so it's kind of to be expected they shift things up a little bit. For the Brumbies, there's still no sign of James Slipper, but you've got Sio, Whainga, and Alalatoa as the pretty familiar front row. Whainga is back to starting after being on the bench for the final with Lockie Lonergan getting a start in that game, so they swap places for this one. Swain and Frost are the second row, so there's no sign of my man Caden Neville, who's been a bit of a defensive powerhouse, but Frost has looked good when he's played as well. Very good work rate. Stowers, Scott, and Valtini is the back row. Now, Valtini's battle up against Cullen Grace should be an interesting one because Cullen Grace has also got a big work rate. But Valtini's really been throwing himself around with ball in hand lately, so he will be a handful. But Cullen Grace should be a guy who's up to the task, so that one will be a little battle in itself. Ryan Lonergan and Lolosio are the 19 combo, so there's no Nick White. Simone Ikitau is the midfield that's been a pretty stable lineup for the Brumbies with their midfielders. Tom Wright, Solomon Akata gets a crack. He hasn't been seen in the Brumbies jersey for a long time. And Tom Banks, who has been probably the most dangerous Aussie outside back, alongside maybe Dalgunu and Korobeti and whatnot. Certainly for the Brumbies, he's looked real dangerous. But that being said, Tom Wright has been a bit of a live wire as well. He's quick, and he's not afraid to throw on an offload. So, that being said, the Brumbies, if you haven't watched them for a while, if you watch the old Super Rugby, you think they're just a team that loves a maul, nothing much else, but they've been scoring a lot of tries through their outside backs. But they still do love a maul. But the Crusaders also love a maul, and they are very good at stopping a maul. So I feel like if the Brumbies go into this one and try to out-maul the Crusaders, it could be a pretty long day at the office. The Crusaders are just generally good all around the park, but they have shifted their lineup up, so maybe there's a chink in the armour. I wouldn't be putting money on it, and neither would the bookies. They've got the Crusaders by 18 points. Massive. Rugby forecast algorithms not quite so dramatic, saying the Crusaders by 11. The next one, my Blues over there in Melbourne. hopefully they can get a win, man. I mean, I know the Blues, they finished with a 4-4 record. It's a bit flattering because the Chiefs played a B team in their final game of the season, so the Blues were able to finish with an even record, finish on the same points as the Chiefs, but as I said, it's a bit deceptive. It's not realistic. The Rebels were disappointing, finished 3-5. Remember, their coach decided to step down, Dave Vessels, so it's a bit of a internal, I want to say conflict. I mean, it sounds like he made the right call by stepping down after a bit of a disappointing campaign. He should have had things right by now with how long he's been in charge of the Rebels, but it didn't come right. He's obviously identified that and made the decision to step down, whether there was pressure on him, probably. But either way, he stepped down. So there's a bit of a change in the back room there for the Rebels, whether that's disruptive or whether they use that to kind of bounce back. Often teams, when they get rid of their coach, they have an immediate kind of bounce back. So that's one thing the Blues will have to be wary of. So yeah, both sides I think are a bit disappointing in their respective competitions. 3-5, 4-4, fourth and third. The Rebels have got Or, Uelese and Elof as the front row. Elof, from memory, recently he's always been playing loose head, but he switches to tight head. Musili's tended to be the guy who gets the crack at tight head, but either way. Leota and Ross Haley-Petty are your locks, and Kemeny, Hardwick, and Wells your back row. Wells is your kind of athletic, good line-out stealer, so the Blues will have to be wary of him, and Hardwick is your man at the breakdown, so likewise they will have to be on form because they haven't got the likes of a Dalton Papali'i in this game, who is their kind of breakdown specialist, but Chote's alright. Powell and Tamua is the 19 combo. That's kind of been the preferred combo all year. Tamua is captain, and remember, if you haven't been watching the Rebels, they're a team that loves a penalty. They are quite happy to keep the scoreboard ticking over in threes. They don't score that many tries. So the Blues discipline is going to have to be good because Tamua's boot's pretty good. And like I said, they will just keep that scoreboard ticking over. Magnay and Ely is the midfield. Korobete, Lomani, and Pincus the back three. So believe it or not, Korobete, despite having some of the best offensive stats in the AU competition, was still not able to score a try. So he will be chomping at the bit to get over the whitewash in this one. Hansen, Tuttle, and so on the bench. For the Blues, Tui Nukuafe, Eklund, and Marcel Renata are the front row. So Renata is the one who's a bit of a shift. The other guys are pretty familiar names. I mean, Renata's been in the Blues for a while, but he's not really been in the starting 15 for sure. Kauli Tuioti, I could have sworn I saw him at the supermarket the other day, but given he's in Melbourne, probably wasn't him. Goodhue, that's their second row. Robinson is captain at 6. Choate is at 7 and Sotutu is at 8. So that means man Akira Ioane is still riding the pine. He's kind of tailed off the same way the Blues have tailed off this season. Sotutu is a guy who's been getting a bit of stick, but his offensive numbers, at least purely statistically, have been phenomenal. He's the best number 8 in New Zealand for like bunch of stats. I think clean breaks, defenders beaten, meters, I can't remember all of them, but it was a lot. A really, really good ball carrier. So whether or not he's not performing up to his own level based on last year's numbers, that's a different question. Christie and Black is the 19 combo. And Black's got a decent boot on him as well. I think Christie's distribution needs to be a bit snappier, but we do have Sam Knock on the bench who tends to add that bit of extra zip. But yeah, whether the Blues go for penalties or go for tries will also be one to see. Faiane and Rico Ioane is an interesting midfield combo. You kind of got your defensive powerhouse in Faiane and Rico Ioane, who's more looking forward to go forward with the ball. At 13, they've also got Bryce Heem on one wing, AJ Lamb on the other, and Zahn Sullivan. Zahn Sullivan's a young guy. Looks really dangerous, got a big old boot on him as well in terms of long distance shots. He's definitely one for the future, so good to see him getting some minutes. Predictions for this one, Blues pretty comfortable favourites. Bookies have got the Blues by 15. The forecast algorithm goes a little bit more conservative by just 1 point. The last one is the Chiefs and the Force. The runner-up in the Chiefs against the Force. The Force were encouragingly good in their campaign. Defensively very strong. Maybe not the sharpest in attack, but they were slowly getting better throughout the season. The Chiefs, speaking of getting better throughout the season, started off a bit slowly, but then went on a massive winning run. They did drop their last 2 games, Crusaders in the final, and their B team lost to the Blues away. But I still think it's a team who should have a bit of momentum about them. 5-3 record win, but they were able to knock over the Crusaders. Now, it is a long flight out to Perth, and these guys did play last week, whereas the Force guys have had a week off. So maybe there's a little bit to like about the Force in that regard. because if you look at the bookies odds, it looks like it's going to be pretty one-sided. But anyway, the fourth side is Robertson, Kaitu'u, and Medrano, which has been a pretty good front row. Their scrum at times has been conceding a few penalties, but again, I think it's one that's getting better as they become a more cohesive unit. Thrush and Fergus Lee-Warner is your second row. Thrush, his line-out defensively is very good, and he's a man who will look to pick off anything that's a bit askew for the Chiefs, and their line-out has had a few issues. Anstey, Koteko, and Stunda is the back row as well. Koteka and Anstey love a tackle, so the Chiefs will have to be sharp, but they've got the tools in their skill set to break even the best defense. Tafu and Godwin as the midfield. Godwin's shifted from 12 to 13. He's captain. Oluwafela, Kahui, and Rob Carney is back. Bit of experience there at fullback. Remember Kahui, former Chief. Watching him go up against his former club is going to be just fascinating. Miotti is on the bench, which is a bit disappointing because McIntyre is your guy at 10. Kubeli is at 9, but Kubeli has been sharp for the Force all season. For the Chiefs, Nathan Harris is there at hooker. That's good news. So hopefully his line-out throwing is on point because, as I mentioned, the Chiefs' line-out with Tokiaho anyway can be a bit hit and miss, but around the park, Tokiaho is pretty much second to none, and he's going to add impact from the bench, old Tokiaho. Ta'avao and Ross are your props, so pretty solid. Lord and Va'i are the second rowers. Va'i is another guy who's had a pretty good season. He's a bit of a big unit, and he's consistent in the air, but also a threat on the ground as well. Likewise, Soakula, Boshia, and Jacobson. Man, that's some breakdown specialists there. Jacobson and Boshia are two of your top guys in getting turnovers on the ground. So the Force, I know they like to carry. They like to go through the phases. Like if you look through the Super Rugby AU teams who get through the most carries, not necessarily the most clean breaks, but carries, they grind teams down at times. They'll have to be really careful because each time you go through a phase is another chance for the likes of a Boshia or a Jacobson to get over the ball. So they'll have to be careful. Weber and D-Mac is your 19 combo. D-Mac is just that kind of magician kind of guy. So like I mentioned, the Force guys love a bit of D. D-Mac loves to unlock that defense. So yeah, that's a good battle. Nankiville and ALB is the midfield. Jonah Lowe, Sean Stevens, and Chase Tia on the bench. The fact they've got D-Mac and Tia playing maybe looks like the Chiefs want to really spin it and maybe tire the Force guys out. We'll have to wait and see because they're both pretty quick guys. They got Balin Sullivan on the bench. He's another guy to watch out for. Very, very elusive and strong runner. Gatlin's on the bench. Messam, as I mentioned. But yeah, the Chiefs will be a bit knackered. Having a final last week and a long flight to Perth certainly not going to aid their preparation. They are still the bookies' favourites over here by 14 points. The Rugby Forecast algorithm pulls it a bit closer, saying Chiefs by 3. So yeah, man, haven't done a preview video with 3 games in it for ages. Nice. 13 minutes. There we go. What do you guys reckon? Do you see the Aussie teams getting some wins here? The Aussie teams are being roundly written off by the bookies in all 5 games. Which one do you think is the most likely banana skin for a Kiwi team? Is it the Blues away from home, Rebels, new coach? Is it the Force to get one over the Chiefs, being well rested and ready to take the ball on? Or can the Brumbies just shock the world and get an away win in Christchurch? You guys let me know your thoughts. And yeah, I'll talk to you again soon. See you later. Bye.